Welcome to Sterling Visionary Voices, the podcast dedicated to bringing you diverse, innovative leadership insights and actionable strategies for success. Join hosts Laura McNeil and Bob Medeiros as they explore the art and science of role model leadership through thought-provoking conversations with real professionals. Whether you're a seasoned leader or aspiring to excellence, Sterling Visionary Voices is your guide to navigating the complexities of your leadership journey.
The study of leadership styles and leadership theories started in 1939 when Kurt Lewin identified 3 core styles of leadership and the effect that each style had on team members. The 3 styles Lewin discovered included laissez-faire, otherwise known as delegative, democracy, and participative approaches. His study proved that leaders received differing results when they led their teams in different ways. In recent years, there have been a number of shifts. There is now more focus on the importance of emotional intelligence and empathy, which is basically the ability for managers and leaders to connect with team members by recognizing and understanding the emotions of others in order to build stronger relationships. There's also the ability to create inclusiveness and collaboration, which is emphasized through the focus on DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Adaptability and resilience, the ability to cultivate new skills and professional alignment in yourself and in others, which also aligns with the development of remote leadership skills that were formed due to the COVID pandemic and the new norms that were created for workers in leadership engagement during that time frame. With us today is a seasoned expert and a PhD in organizational leadership, Dr. Michael Hilley. Dr. Hilley is currently teaching at Southeastern University, Capella University, St. Leo's University, and the University of Arizona. He also provides chaplaincy services for the Florida Department of Corrections. Welcome to Visionary Voices, Dr. Hilley. I'm wondering if you could start out by shedding some light on some of the biggest issues that you have seen in modern leadership today.
Well, first, Laura, thank you for having me on this. I've looked forward to it. But as far as modern day leadership and problems and issues that are addressed, I think one of the biggest problems that we have in our leadership today is the inability to define what leadership is. If you put 20 people in a room and ask them to write a definition of leadership or what a leader is, they're going to come up with 20 different definitions. There might be some areas where it overlaps, but we haven't really, even throughout the several decades that we've been studying leadership, come up with a succinct definition that fits all areas of our culture. And you mentioned in the introduction the adaptability and resilience that's needed in our everyday workplace today. Coming up with a leadership that fits all of that is extremely, extremely difficult. I think back to a case that the Supreme Court had years ago regarding pornography. And after they went through trying to define what pornography was, they finally came to the conclusion, well, we can't really define it, but we know it when we see it. And sometimes leadership is exactly like that. I mean, we can't really define it. We know it when we see it. We know it when we experience. But I think one of the other issues that we see, when you talked about Lewin and his 3 core styles of leadership, the autocratic or democratic and laissez-faire, the problem is that we still practice a lot of those part of those 3 core types of leadership, especially autocratic. It's easier to tell people what to do than it is to teach them how to do it and to train them. And you also mentioned to build stronger relationships. Well, that takes time. And that's one of the problems we have in developing leadership today, because we're an instant culture. We want it done right now. We want it actually done yesterday. And what happens is we're not spending the time that we need to develop our own leadership skills, much less teaching others and helping others develop theirs. And I think how we view leadership is a big issue that's confronting us today, because in our culture, we see leadership as something that we do, as kind of an external event. You see those little trite sayings, and there's nothing wrong with those on LinkedIn. Uh, leaders eat last. Well, if I eat last, does that make me a leader? Well, not really. It just means maybe I came late to the party. Um, Napoleon said leaders solve problems. Well, if I solve a problem, does that make me a leader? That may just mean I solved a problem. So we equate leadership with some of these things, and I know what they're saying, but I think it sometimes dilutes the importance of leadership and what we're actually trying to do in our leadership skills. But we view leadership as an external event. We see it as something people do, when in reality, it's not something that we do. Leadership is who we are. And it comes from a deeper reality within us. It comes from our values, our principles, our life experiences, the very essence of our being. And one of the problems that we have today in our culture is, and it comes out of our educational system that trains us. We learn what to think, not how to think. We learn what to do, not how to be. We learn what to achieve, not how to achieve. And we learn about things, but not the essence of things. And so a lot of times when we talk about leadership, we're looking at it as an external event. I hear people sometimes say, well, I became a leader today. Well, what they mean is they got a leadership position, which is the lowest form of leadership that you can have. It's like Maxwell said, um, you follow that person because you have to. You follow them because that's the only way you're going to get paid, but it's the lowest form of leadership that we have, and so forth. So that's some of the biggest issues in leadership today.
So that's very interesting. When I think of a leader, I think of a leader as an individual who has a very strong code of ethics, code of conduct, code of morals type of thing, right? And I believe that the leader is really resembling the organization's code of ethics, code of conduct, code of morals, right? Are you seeing anything with leadership as it's evolving in regard to that whole dynamic of how the leader is the representation of the organization, and the organization has a code of ethics, as I would expect a leader to have a code of ethics that is in alignment? Anything there, Dr. Hilley, that you're seeing?
Well, I think, every company has a code of ethics. And I agree with you. The expectation would be that the leader who works for that company would have uh, a code of personal ethics that would align pretty much with the company's ethics. However, with the expectations of many companies and organizations today, that becomes extremely difficult for a lot of people to maintain that, as we would say, that North Compass, that North Star, because there's so much pressure to perform. There's so much pressure to earn the next dollar. There's so much pressure to succeed, and so forth. And what happens is we get into situations where, in order to succeed, sometimes people will say, well, I'll cut corners this time. I'll do this just this one time. And then, hey, it worked. So, you do it again and again and again. And pretty soon, what started out with a high level of ethical behavior has now devolved into cutting corners, not maintaining that North Star that we have. Why? Because we've got to succeed. If we don't, we could lose our jobs. And I blame the companies for putting that kind of pressure on people. I'll give you an example. Let's say that a person in sales is doing extremely well. You have a sales force of 10 people. You have one person that does extremely well, meets all the sales goals, and in fact exceeds them. So what do? Well, they reward that person by making them a manager. And now that person is not making the sales because they're too busy managing other people. I would propose that one of the better ways of doing that is, first of all, if a person is meeting those goals, keep them as part of the team. They're more valuable to the company that way. Increase their pay. I mean, if you're going to pay them to be a manager, you can certainly afford to pay them as a salesperson who's doing extremely well for your organization. You can also reward those who meet certain quota by giving them an extra day off here and there, or manage their own schedule, whatever it is. But, this thing of we're going to now make you a manager, which ultimately is the goal is to make you a leader of this team, is sometimes counterproductive to what organizations are trying to do. And it is to, maintain a high level of revenue and succeed in what it is they're called to do. But yeah, and the ethical standards of the company remains the same; those don't change. But the way that it's having to be carried out sometimes with the workforce uh, lends itself to a lot of unethical behavior, which we're seeing more and more of in our organizations today.
Interesting. So I wonder if you have any tips and tricks for us to utilize when we see leaders struggling. Is there anything that we can offer to leaders to make them better leaders?
Well, we all know that for a person to be a leader, there must be followers. And sometimes in the capacities that I've had that would be considered leadership, some of the best ideas and the best encouragement and the best support that I had were from those who were following. Now, unfortunately, a lot of leaders will not listen to those who are following because, after all, they're the leader and nobody needs to tell them what to be doing. However, if we listen to those that are following, we can get some tremendous ideas. And I think if let's say we're followers and we have a leader that's struggling, sometimes the best thing we can do is offer them our support and say, hey, you're doing a great job. I kind of see that you're struggling in this particular area. And is there anything I can do to help? Is there anything I can change in my style of following that will help you overcome this part of leadership? Because leadership is a struggle, and it's one of the loneliest positions that you can have because uh, there is only one leader in that particular group, and it can be a very lonely place.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the traits I believe of a good leader is somebody who motivates, like you're saying, the followers. And it's almost like a cyclical thing. The more you motivate the followers motivate the leader, and you build that inherently collaborative and trusting environment. Wondering if you have any thoughts in regard to that around motivation. What can be done to continue, or for leaders to continue to motivate on an ongoing basis the followers? Any thoughts?
Yeah. Yeah, I think to motivate someone, well, I'm not sure that we can motivate another person. I think in some ways, we can only motivate ourselves. But I think we can set standards where we can encourage other people. We can maybe be there for them. We can help them achieve the goals that they've set by setting the right conditions around them. But I think that motivation comes from within an individual. One of the things that you mentioned a moment ago was to, uh, build those relationships that are needed, and stronger relationships. And those are things, again, that take time. It's not something that happens quickly. And the way we try to approach things today, the faster the better. And in some people's mindset. And when we do that, we've missed an opportunity to build that relationship and everything. But I think, for example, I do some chaplaincy work at the state prison, and I can say I have a pretty captive audience there sometimes. And when I talk to those men, and I can look up and see what they've done to get there, and it's some pretty bad stuff. They don't just drop a busload off there and say, here you are for the next 30 years. They send the worst of the worst there. And when you look at what they've done, you say, wow, I'm not sure I want to turn my back on this guy. However, one thing I have done along the way is to treat every man with respect. I call him Mr. So-and-so, even though other people kind of say, well, you shouldn't be doing that. Well, I'm going to respect this individual until he gives me a reason not to. And I'm going to treat him with dignity because, coming from a Judeo-Christian perspective, he's made in the image of God, and I'm going to treat him as a human being. And sometimes after you do that for a while, you find that you're able then to motivate some of these guys to at least start taking an introspective look at their own lives and come up with something that may change the way they think about things, the way they do things. And I think the same principle works in the workplace too. We need to show respect to one another and treat each other with dignity. We all struggle in some ways. And the more we can lean on each other and find solutions to those struggles in a collaborative effort, and there's nothing better than that can build a strong team. So,
Right. And there are similarities to being there, and in comparison to a work environment. Do you see any similarities there? Working with the prisoners versus, and the challenges that they have compared to like a leader in the workplace?
well, I think the principles are pretty much the same. Leadership doesn't happen by appointment, and it doesn't happen over a brief period of time. Leaders actually emerge over the long haul, and it takes time to build those relationships. When I first went out to the prison, I mean, none of those guys would hardly speak to me. And now I get tired of hearing my name, hey, and that type thing. So I think the workplace is pretty much the same way. You have to earn the right to be heard. You have to earn the right to develop as a leader in the midst of your peers and do the things that earns their respect and their trust. And whether you're an appointed leader or not, you will have that influence with them that is needed to effectively lead another person. So yeah, there's a lot of similarities between what's there and what's in the workplace as far as developing leadership and developing relationships is concerned.
Right, right. What about tips and thoughts for how I could better myself to be the leader for the future? Where do you see the trends going? What characteristics and skill sets would I need to develop for the future?
Wow. Well, whatever I say today, it will change tomorrow because we're changing at such a rapid pace today. That it's very, very difficult to say what skills we're going to need. One of the things that I would think is going to be an essential is to develop, what Daniel Goleman coined emotional and social intelligence, because sometimes we get into situations where if you're going to be effective, you have to read the room. And you have to have a level of social intelligence. Now, one thing is important about that is it can be learned. IQ cannot be learned. That you either have a high IQ and you may raise it a couple of points, it may drop a couple of points, but that's your IQ. But EQ and SI are two different things that you can learn, and you're able to read effectively the room. And when you can do that, then you know how to conduct yourself in relationship to those in the room. And I teach leadership and social intelligence at Southeastern University. And that's one of the things that we stress. You have to be able to read the room. You have to know what is socially acceptable in certain situations and be able to adapt to that very, very quickly, and you know what to say. You know how to, we call it working a room, but by that, and it sometimes gets a bad rap when we use it that way. But you have to know how to work a room because you have to be aware of your surroundings and who's in that room. And that's where the empathy comes in. That's where the, building relationships takes place because we're able to know where this person is and we can relate to them. If you can walk away from one of those conversations, making that person feel like they're the most important person in that room, and you've done a good job working the room.
Right, right. Even more important in this day and age of Zoom conference calling and everything virtual and, mixed hybrid environments. It's very, very true. I guess it comes down to that common element of connecting with people, right? If you have a true connection and a true level of trust, it's so much easier, I believe, to build that leader-follower relationship organically, like you said, organically.
And I'll tell you that's something that has been difficult for me through the years is connecting with people because we're all products of our background, our upbringing, the things that we experienced at certain stages of our life. And it's for a while there, it was very difficult for me to connect with people, and it showed in my relationships that they were not as strong as they could have been. And it took a while to get back to that area, back to that level of wanting to engage and learning to trust those around me and so forth. And but yeah, connecting with other people, I mean that's a must. That's a necessity if we're going to be successful in our leadership abilities.
Right, right. Well, I find that very surprising what you just said about yourself, having known you for quite some time and worked with you. I believe that you create very, very strong good working relationships and solid social relationships. So surprising to hear you say that.
Yeah, I'm much better now than I was 10 years ago.
That's good. Well, I think I knew you 10 years ago. I think it's been a good 15-year minute.
Let's go back 20 years then.
Right. No. It's always a pleasure talking with you, Dr. Hilley, and I'd love to have you, love to have you back for another episode if you're up for it in the future.
Let me know. I would love to do it. Thank you so very much.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Sterling Visionary Voices, Insights for Role Model Leadership from the Sterling Council. Discover more and connect with us at sterlingvisionaryvoices.com.